Thanks, Michelle. Mindy's out of the office today, so I am going to get us kicked off here. So welcome everyone to our June 21st UCCCN meeting. And we are going to try to shorten up our introductions, continue to do that. So if you'll all take a minute, and in your Zoom profile, if you click on the little ellipses that's in the upper right-hand corner, you can see that there's a way to rename your profile. So if you can go ahead and put in your role and your first and last name and your role and or the organization you work for, that'd be great. And we'll do that as a way of kind of introducing ourselves to each other. And then Michelle, thanks. You skipped ahead for me, which is great. Can we just go back to the overview of the agenda really fast? We'll cover some announcements and updates, have our brainstorming session, and we have a spotlight today on a new resource from Angie Richens. And then Eric is going to be our main presenter today to talk about some common problems that we are typical in medical home coordination. So, all right, let's go to our announcements. And actually, before I get started on that, just as always, feel free to also use the chat box or the raise hand feature throughout the meeting. If you have questions about things or have something that you want to add, please just jump in. This is not a super strict or formal meeting, and we want this to be your meeting as well. So please just feel free to jump in with anything that you would like to as well. So our first announcement is the PEDS ECHO project. So the spring session's done for now, but there are some Autism 101 echoes that are scheduled for June and July, and then our later summer and fall sessions are scheduled, but the topic is still to be determined. So all around Autism 101. And you can see that there's the link there to register for those echo sessions, especially if you're wanting continuing education credits. So, and next announcement is some of our medical home portal updates. These are pages that have all been updated in the last month. So POTS FAQ, that's specifically written for parents, pediatric diabetes type 2 screening and management care process model, and the developmental screening page have all had updates. Our June spotlight, we're going to turn a little bit of time over to Angie Richens, who had a new resource to share with us for the month. And I saw her on earlier.
Hi, thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Hey, thanks for giving me a moment to just check in. Previously, you guys know me over the last however many years with UCCCN as being with Alpine Pediatrics. Our collaborative care program closed at the end of May. We found over time that insurance companies were not reimbursing well enough for the service to keep it sustainable long term. So my team, including our psychiatrist, Dr. Matt Swenson, are moving on to different things. Matt Swenson will be returning to Utah Valley Psychiatry and Counseling. And I am now doing a care management private company called Mentalis. And I can certainly forward the information to Athena and Michelle, make sure that contact resources and everything are put in those in the June spotlight. So bottom line, it's really the intent is to make sure that what we found beneficial for parents, for providers, physicians, psychiatrists that our families were working with, was having, you know, an RN or nurse care manager that can help parents navigate new and overwhelming diagnoses, ADHD, anxiety, depression, the medications associated with those. It can do a lot of education and monitoring on those medications, those new doses, help parents understand when they should be reaching back out to their providers if it's sooner than their, regularly scheduled appointments, if there are concerns or issues. Parenting helps as far as, navigating the behaviors that are associated with some of those diagnoses, school assistance, the general diagnoses education. It's HSA qualified, so they can utilize those pre-tax dollars to pay for the service. It's a monthly service, and they can have, an RN checking in with them as often, as needed. But typically we find, 2 to 3 times a month is adequate to give them time to, know how a medicine is working or not. And we also work with physicians sending updates as needed, or helping parents, get written updates to physicians ahead of those appointments so that they can make their appointments really efficient. Does anybody have any questions about that? I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you so much, Angie. And then Michelle, if you'll click on that link, it'll actually take you to the if you're able to, maybe you're not able to in the slides. We have a listing up on the medical home portal for Mentalus, and with all the contact information on there. And then it will also go out into the resources of the month that will be linked in our notes after this meeting as well.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions on that, or anyone else have any other resource spotlights or things that you've heard of that you'd like to share with the group? There is one other, it's okay, Michelle, if you can't bring it up, just go to the next slide. This is another, just a second, we'll get our slides back up here. All right, so this is another event that came in through one of our emails as well, about an event, a caregiver pampering night coming up in Sugar House on July 29th. And it's sponsored by a group called Everstory. And so we wanted to make you all aware of this event as well, to maybe share with some of the families that you work with. And there is registration required, so that QR code will take you to the registration. You can nominate somebody or yourself as well. So I posted it up on the our UCCCN Facebook group, but it'll also, we can link it as a resource in the notes that go out as well after this meeting. Anyone else have any other resources and or spotlights you want to share with the group? Our upcoming events?
This is Dora from Shriners.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let anyone that refers to us know that we are now on Epic Care Link. If you're a clinic that has referred quite a bit, I've stopped by your clinic already, but I can enroll. I don't know if you know what that means. If you have it or you do not have it, I can go into your clinic and create access for your providers and for you. That way you can refer directly and view documentation as it's moving. So referral comes in, you can enter it, you can see when they've been scheduled, if we've called family. So if you are a clinic that refers and I haven't reached out to you, feel free to contact me. And that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. That's great. Always good to get the electronic health records working together. So All right, our next little piece, we have just a quick poll for our August meeting. So if you'll take just a couple seconds here to answer these questions. So typically our August meeting covers things like IEP, special education, and 504s. And we would just like you to rate how valuable you would find a meeting about that topic as the school year starts. And then also how relevant the topic is to your current role. So just take a few moments to answer those questions. It'll help us with our planning for our upcoming August meeting. All right, and then Michelle, are there, you see responses coming in on your end on that?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
yes, I think so. Yeah, it looks like we've got about 16 of 20 participants. So we could probably go ahead and
Okay,
continue with the meeting. I'll leave it up for anybody who might still be thinking about it.
okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, next on the docket is at the time of the meeting that we would love to hear any information you've had about recent cases or barriers, ideas, any new resources you'd like to share. This is the brainstorming section of our meeting where, again, we would love to use this collective group to help solve problems that are coming up or tap into the collective wisdom of this group to help navigate families to something new or work to address any barriers you're experiencing. So I will turn the time over to you guys for a minute.
Athena, is this where we're doing our case share?
We'll do it in just a second. We're gonna give the rest of the group some time if they have anything else.
Okay.
Can we ask about medications? Kelsey from Wasatch Peds said, yes, would you like to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, so I've come across more and more that there's newer medications that the doctors, at least in our area, are prescribing, and they're not being covered just because they are newer. I think it's what the Mideas, the Quellbri, and the Journey, and possibly a couple other ones. Has anybody had success with getting those approved without step therapy?
Can you repeat what those were?
So the Journey.
And what is
then
that for?
So these are ADHD like medications.
Okay.
They're newer medications.
I haven't heard of any of them yet, but it depends on, if it's insurance, they generally love to do that step therapy of try this first. And if this doesn't work, try that. That doesn't work. We'll finally get you to, like, I had to do that with heart medication. And it took me 8 months to finally get to the medication I really needed. Medicaid, you can't appeal a decision with them. And you need a lot of backup from, that primary care doctor and any specialists that would chime in if they could. But it's doable, but it's it's appeals or the step therapy, which can take months.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I figured if anyone had any tips, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have any other questions? Great question, Kelsey. Sorry, we didn't have a better answer for you. Or cases they'd like to talk about. We'll have a little bit of time. We're going to turn over to Tina, and Tina, I put your slides right in here too, so you can just let us know when to advance them. Tina's going to walk us through another kind of case example.
Hi, guys. Okay, so this is our June case share. We talked about this in our planning meeting, and it's something that I wanted to bring up. This case share is going to represent multiple cases because it's something that I come across all the time. So I'd like to get some volunteers to read these nicely written paragraphs for me. Anybody'd like to raise their hand and read the first page here? If you don't raise your hand, I'll pick you. There, I see you, Jade.
Okay. All right. So SSI for children. This share represents multiple cases. A parent calls into the Utah Parent Center. They say they were referred by their primary care physician or diagnosing provider or a therapist or another type of provider. They say they were told to apply for their child for SSI. They will qualify because they have been diagnosed with a disability. Many say they are told that the Utah Parent Center can help them.
Okay, guys, so this is our share. How many of you, I'd like to know, come across families who are newly diagnosed that are seeking that SSI for their child? Okay, so we're going to go through a few things today just so that we can, I think, clear up, hopefully between us anyway. There's a lot of other providers out there. If anybody is not sure about whether a child can or can't, or if they are sure, let's go over this together. So SSI stands for Supplemental Security for Children. Okay, and you're going to see two things out there if you search. I prefer the first paragraph. And Eric, how about if you read that? I love you. Thank you.
Oh, butter me up, will you? All right. SSI provides monthly cash payments to help meet the basic needs of children who have a physical or mental disability or who are blind. If you care for a child or teenager with a disability and have limited income and savings or other resources, your child may be eligible for SSI.
Okay, thank you, Eric. And then the second one is SSI provides monthly payments to people with limited income and resources who are 65 and older or blind or have a qualifying disability. Children younger than 18 can qualify if they have a medical condition or combination of conditions that meets Social Security's definition of disability. Their income and resources must fall within the eligibility limits. I think this one is the one that comes up more when you do a search about SSI. And it does basically say the same thing as the first paragraph, but it's not as clear. It says their income. When, for those of us out there who have children, whether they have a disability or not, when they are under 18 years old, our income is their income. And so that's where things get a little confusing for families. Next slide, please. So it depends. Oh, I didn't enlarge that. Sorry, guys. It depends on the parent and family income. It really, really does. So when we're letting someone know who has a child under 18, I took this straight out of SSI's language. Let's have Athena, would you like to read the first bullet?
Sure. It says, we consider a child's income and resources when deciding if they are eligible for SSI. We also consider the income and resources of family members living in the child's household. These rules apply if your child lives at home. They also apply if your child is away at school but returns home from time to time and is subject to your supervision.
Okay, and then your child's income and resources, or the income and resources of the family members, which sometimes will include a sibling who lives at home and works. So remember that a child is part of your household until they become 18. So when my son, for years and years, Adam did not qualify for SSI until he turned 18 because Steve and I both had jobs that made okay money. You have to really be at a lower income, and the SSI income eligibility is generally right with Medicaid. It's whatever Utah Medicaid is at that time. It does change sometimes. So the income and resources of those family members is important to remember, whoever's in that household. And we think of households, think of when you fill out forms, when you get a job, like what is your household size? So currently in our house, my husband and I are one household. My daughter is her own household because she's 22. And then my son is his own household. That's kind of how the IRS and all those entities like SSI and everybody else looks at it, even though you live in the same home.
Tina, can I ask a question here? What
Sure.
if, though, you had maybe an adult child living with you who wasn't disabled, but maybe wasn't gainfully employed, and you're basically providing their I don't even want to say gainfully employed, but they contribute something, but it's not a lot of money to the household. Is it just because of age, they are considered their own household once they're over 18, even if they live with you?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they're their own household. That's
Because of age. Okay.
Just because of their age. Yeah. Now there might be some things when we're doing our taxes with the IRS that we can look to claim some of that if they're in school or something like that. But generally, if they don't have a disability, they're kind of on their own. They, now if they're over 18 and they do have a disability, the parents can claim adult disabled dependent on their taxes, because somebody like, of course, my son will be cared for by his parents forever. So, yeah. Sorry, Eric.
No worries. I just know that back a million years ago when I used to work in Department of Workforce Services, and I used to process, Medicaid and TANF and all the rest of it. Sometimes those income things from other people living in the household just messed everything up. And I just couldn't remember how it was for, SSI, like if they looked at that sort of thing or not, when you had other adult possibly contributing members.
And I think a good caseworker would probably say, well, gosh, this individual might need some services like, food stamps or something like that. To help that household, of course. So again, it may be more than that amount allowed. And if it is more than the amount allowed, SSI will deny them. They will, if they did have that disqualifying disability, have the determination of disability attached to their file though, which is great, just to have that. But you don't necessarily always want to apply for SSI just to have that determination. Some, I believe one of the waivers a while back did have you apply to get the determination to be able to be determined for this waiver, but it's a long process to go through to be denied. And so, yeah. And then they limit monthly payments to $30 when children are in a medical facility. So when my son was born and he was in the NICU for a year, the caseworker came to us and helped us set up for SSI. And so he got $30 a month, which helped us pay for gas going back and forth to the hospital every day. But then when he got out, it was redetermined. Now he's, at home with his parents who have jobs. And so what does that look like? And at that point, he did not qualify anymore. Now, what we see with some families is they will not report something back to SSI, and they will keep getting payments somehow, and they will be owing money to SSI. Next slide, please. So what can we do to decrease the disappointment that a family has if their child doesn't qualify for SSI due to income? I think from that starting point of communication, we need to let them know it's not guaranteed. It depends on your income. that will clear a lot of things up for families. Language like, you know, use the eligibility tool to see if you're even close to possibly being eligible. So I have a few resources here, and here's the things we want to do. We want to let the family know that there's a possibility, right? And it depends on income, and that eligibility limit is the same as Utah Medicaid. So, you know, if families applied for Medicaid and you know that and they did not qualify, you know, let them know that it's around the same amount. We always want them to feel like they can apply. We don't want to tell them don't. But I'm kind of real with families, and I'll let them know it's a long process to go through. And if you really aren't even close to the eligibility limit, then please understand. And sometimes they'll have it in their head, if they're deemed disabled, they should receive this funding. And it's just not that way. It is considered a supplement for families who just don't have the funding to, which nobody really has the funding for a kid with disabilities. It's very expensive, right? But it's just not that way. So the tools that we can give them is SSA Best. I love to give out because it's a benefit eligibility screening tool, which you can go on and put in the information and, you know, have them remember that they're putting their income, not their child's income, because the child has zero probably at that point. Also, take note that child support is income according to SSI. Have them use that, and then have them look at, you know, how to apply this SSI. Apply for a child page is very comprehensive, and the language is enough to where most people can go through it and figure out, you know, how to do it. They can always call the Utah Parent Center to, you know, and I've walked through over the phone, you know, an SSI application with families. So, and then the starter kit will help them get prepared for their application as well. So those are the 3-star resources I like to give families of kids under 18 who want to try to get this funding. It's just not for everyone. There's a lot of families that do receive it, and there's a lot of families that don't. So next slide. Here's my contact information. You can always send families to us. This little presentation was just to help anybody who's, you know, confused about it or not clear about it. This is kind of the real talk. So thank you. And if you have any questions, please.
Thank you so much, Tina. That is super helpful to understand SSI and the eligibility a little bit better. And I think that is just like great little snippets of information to remember, that it's super important to let families know about SSI, but let them emphasize that it may not be guaranteed, and to use some of the tools available to see if it's a possibility. So I think that's a great way of messaging that. I like how you stated that we can change our messaging to help with that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it really helps to, you know, the families that are calling me are saying, but no, they told me, my doctor's office told me that my kid would qualify. And it's like, well, and, you know, maybe they didn't hear it right, maybe they didn't understand correctly, but we just need to emphasize that language a little bit more, I think. And I'm always there to talk a parent down, to help them understand, to give them the bad news. But I'd rather, you know, help them with something else and make them happier.
Yes, indeed.
So.
Okay, thank you so much, Tina. As Tina was presenting, did anybody else have any other cases that came to mind? Or it looks like we have a hand raised from Gwen. Did you have a question?
I do have a question. Thank you, Tina. I love that. That's one of the hardest things for me is Social Security. So that was great. I have a question, because I don't know if I'm telling families incorrectly, but when I'm helping a family apply, I do think they get caught up on, they get determined, that they do have a disability. And so they think that, that they're entitled. And I try to tell them that even if they don't get it now because of income, it could help establish in the future when they become 18 or become an adult. Is that, I know oftentimes they have to be kind of certified, I guess, or retested or resubmitted, but I do like, that's kind of like the way I kind of soften the blow, but then I don't want to be a fibber because that doesn't guarantee that they'll still be disabled
Yeah.
at that time as an adult.
So it depends on the kid, their condition, and their age. I would say if they're really young, again, like I said, I'm a mom who doesn't have a lot of time. I really wouldn't want to fill out stuff that's not going to benefit him immediately. So just to get that determination, I would say only if something you're filling out is asking for that, would I dive in. If you apply and oops, you don't qualify, then you have that determination. The determination is important more as an adult, but when they're 18, they have to reapply for SSI. There's child SSI and adult SSI. So when they're 18, they've got to reapply for that adult SSI. And a lot of times they will have to go through that non-biased disability determination process again. So I think it's, that's going to really depend on what the parent wants to do. And, in the future, we may see more need for that determination to be something, but I just think going through the whole process of application is a lot of work for no real, benefit at the time.
This is Heidi. I am in the process of trying to get SSI for my son. He just turned 18 in November. We had SSI way, when he was younger. Then of course I didn't, I made too much money and they took it away, blah, blah, blah. But and we're also going through Voc Rehab as well. And the worker at Voc Rehab said that if they have an intellectual disability, then that's something that they'll probably never grow out of. They'll never, it's always going to be a disability. But she said, and I don't know if it's true, I haven't, but she said that they shouldn't have never taken my Social Security disability away because he does have an intellectual disability. And I said, but I made too much money. And she said that shouldn't have mattered.
It does.
Yeah, I thought that, but she was pretty adamant about it. So I don't know. I'm in the process
Who was it you were talking to?
Voc Rehab.
Voc Rehab, yeah. I think they've got their wires crossed. It's just, it's always dependent on the parent's income until they're 18.
Yeah, and like I said, I started the process when he was 18 in January. And they said it was going to be at least 247 days to finish a review. That doesn't mean that he's going to get it.
I saw that. I saw your post and I thought that's wild. I don't know if maybe there's more applications going through, but I tell families between, depending on the case and the reviews that happen, it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months. And I actually talked to a mom not too long ago, and I think it was 35 days for them.
That would be awesome. Yeah, no, because they have a little, you can check your status, and I do. I check it every month to make sure I'm not missing anything. And it'll say 53% of the, of your application has been processed. So as of yesterday or the other day, it was 53%, and I filed for him in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
If you need help.
I will. Thank you.
I was just going to say, I think quite often folks apply for SSI, not necessarily because of the huge amount of SSI money they're going to get to take care of their kid. I mean, we do know that if you even receive like $1 of SSI money, you're generally categorically eligible for Medicaid. I say generally because that SSI determination counts as that disability determination for, Medicaid for, the kiddo here in the state. So quite often families apply because they want to get that Medicaid, to pay for the medical costs. Let's say we know a family is probably not going to qualify for SSI because of income and assets. What are other alternatives? Doesn't mean because you're not going to qualify for SSI, though, it's not worth applying for Medicaid, correct? Because you might have some other alternatives through Medicaid that would be worth it. Maybe not every single month, but occasionally the Medicaid piece.
So within Utah, we have things to look at like the ABD Medicaid, which is, you'll hear it termed as disability Medicaid or age blind and disabled. So that's something that can be looked at. And the other thing is a spend down with Medicaid. A lot of times I will work with families who, they just make just over, so they'll spend that overage of their income down in order to receive the Medicaid. So there are a few things to look at other than just doing it that way. And because SSI and Medicaid are so close in their eligibility amounts, sometimes that dollar doesn't really pan out.
Yeah. I know back when I was doing some quite often like Medicaid for families that might have a big surgery or a big procedure or something. They didn't qualify a lot of months for Medicaid, but they knew they had a big procedure coming up and they could spend down on Medicaid to ensure that those expensive months for their kiddo, they had some sort of coverage during that time frame. And so, they're left responsible for some of those other, bills. And you can use, for a spend down, you can use incurred expenses, like medical bills and things like that you're still responsible for. But that was another means. I just wanted to put out there that it's not always hopeless sometimes to get Medicaid. Are you going to get it ongoing? Maybe not all the time, but you can spend down sometimes and you get that medical card to at least a certain portion of the year sometimes for some of our families that have some of these big expenses.
And Tina, there was a question in the chat as well about how retirement accounts are counted as income for SSI. Heidi's responded that yes, it is.
I'm currently Googling that.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was like certain types of retirement accounts.
It counts. Because it's an asset. It's considered an asset.
Is it all types of retirement accounts, or just certain ones, or?
So anything that is not in a special needs trust, if that, and I've been talking with a disability law person. So anything that, like if I pass away and I leave anything to my son, that's considered an asset. If anything that is gifted to him or any monies, any assets, then it counts as an asset. It counts against them.
Mm.
So what I mean is so if they base it off of the parent's income and that parent, let's say they're a younger parent and they've been trying to, put money away for their retirement, and that's going to count towards the application.
Yes. So when my son was, they will ask if you have any assets or money in a retirement account. So like my 401k, that was through Intermountain at the time. I had to disclose that.
Oh, wow.
Because
so even if you can't access it until age 65, it counts.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Like they count everything. And so the disability law person that I'm speaking with, and that's why they said that because it was really because my 401k had a lot of money in it, because Intermountain matched. They did it, they do a good match. it was considered an asset. So.
Well, I think that was answered for us.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
Googling a lot because I wanted to make sure, because sometimes there's those accounts that are sheltered, like that's some may not count, but I think, yeah, it's all assets. It's what do you have in the bank? And again, that supplemental security income is exactly what the words say, is supplemental security to help with those daily needs, like paying that rent of where you're staying, or you know, the daily needs. And so that's why they require, once a child is over 18, they require you to make the statement, if they're living in your home, that they are paying room and board,
Right.
because they want to know that's where the money is going.
Right. Well, and also the reason why the lawyer said they count it is because you can actually stop contributing to the 401k or to the retirement account at any time. So that's why they also, and there is like they did say that you can, even though it says you can't get it out at 65, there is like some hardships or some accounts that you can draw from, you know, for emergency basis. And that's another reason why they do count it as an asset.
Thanks, Heidi.
Well, let's see, another question, Heather. Oh, you're muted, Heather. We cannot hear you.
Heather, type it in the box. I think we have a repeat of Tuesday morning. I had a one-on-one with Heather yesterday morning, and boy, we had a trouble with her microphone. So.
She was just wanted to mention the medically complex children's waiver.
That it's open, or what did you want to say about it?
Oh, she's working on it.
She's really cute with her bobby head. I need to, I'm not up to date on exactly what's happening right now. I do know that it's open. Eric, do you know more?
Yeah, so it is open. There were more slots allocated in this legislative session. So I know they were taking applications. As always, it's based on acuity of need. So they do an assessment to determine, you know, how critical the child is. They try to place emphasis on children who have greater, you know, healthcare needs to fill those slots. And you apply for the waiver, and then you also do Medicaid application in addition to that. But Heather, you recently had, though, a mom who qualified for her kiddo on the waiver. So they got accepted, I believe, and went through the subsequent, you know, Medicaid application on top of it. So we had recent success for a pretty complex kiddo within the last, like I had any part of it. It was Heather and the sweet mom that did it. But they got the medically complex children's waiver and Medicaid for this family, all within about the last month, 6 weeks. Heather, is that right? And then Gwen says they had a baby approved in Price as well. And generally for medically complex children's waiver, it's multiple systems. So kiddo with complex issues, they see multiple providers. So these are pretty complex kids. But again, the people who run the program at Medicaid are really looking at, you know, for lack of better terms, kind of an algorithm to just really look at the kids who are very complex, so that they take the kids with most medical acuity first, and then kind of work on down that list. But as with all waivers, for those of you who don't know kind of what a waiver means, Waiver is generally that the state has applied with the feds to say we would like to waive certain Medicaid eligibility requirements in the state. Once that's accepted by the feds, then Utah is able to say we would like to waive maybe income and asset requirements for kids who are medically complex. And based off of medical acuity, the Medicaid is allowed in the state to determine those kids who qualify for waiver, this waiver program. So that's how most of those waiver programs work, waiving general eligibility requirements that would fall under the normal Medicaid requirements, as Tina's citing, such as income and assets or what have you. In this case, it's based off of that medical acuity and kind of medical disability, if you will.
And I see Heather put in the comments that they applied and got approved within 1 week. So it's pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah. So some good stuff. So there are some alternatives, and all is not lost. Again, if there's SSI is not a possibility. And I was going to say too, and I'm not throwing Tina under the bus when I say this, but Tina, you might be used as a speed bump, so my apologies ahead of time. But I esteem you highly, regardless. Please reach out. We're happy to answer questions here at ISP. I know at Utah Parent Center, Utah Family Voices, they're happy to answer some questions. So if it's nebulous for you and you're not quite sure what to tell a parent, you can reach out and ask questions. I know that we'd probably rather have that than parents, getting well-intentioned, but, misinformation. So please always feel like you can reach out.
That didn't feel like a speed bump. We love
pothole. Maybe, but no, I know I know they are so terrific at Utah Parent Center, and we rely on them all the time ourselves. So
great. I mean, that was a really great discussion about SSI and the intricacies of it and how to think about it in a way that's going to be more helpful for families. So thank you so much, Tina, for that. And we'll now turn the time over to Eric, who's going to talk a little bit more about some common problems to address as a medical home coordinator, one of which I'm sure is helping people determine whether or not they're eligible for SSI, which we've already covered. And he will take us through the end of our meeting. I need to step out just a little bit early, so we'll turn it over to Eric, and then he'll close us out whenever he's done with his presentation.
Well, good morning. I'm glad to be with you. I'll share my screen here in just a moment. I have to tell you, Tina's a tough act to follow, so this could be a real sleeper for you. So go get some coffee, some caffeine, and hopefully we'll talk through some things that will be helpful to you today. I want this to be more of a kind of a discussion, so please feel free to put information in the chat. We're going to ask you to do a poll everywhere. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And my goodness, this gives me lots of stuff here. So let's hope this is the right screen to share. All right, does this give you something that looks like a PowerPoint presentation? Yes? Yes. And it looks like the animated one and everything else. Okay, because wow, you think this is my first rodeo. Anyway, we're going to talk today. The title is The Medical Home and Common Problems to Address as a Medical Home Coordinator. That's just fancy talk as far as I'm concerned for being a care coordinator. And I think we come to these meetings because we're all kind of connected with care coordination in one way or another. So our next slide here is going to ask all of you to log into Poll Everywhere. You can do it on your phone or on your computer if you're running dueling screens here. So let me give you this Poll Everywhere. Makes me look like I'm famous. This got my own Poll Everywhere login here, but you can text Eric Christian 389 to 22333, or you can go to pollev.com, Eric Christian 389 on your computer. And that'll bring it up because we have just some kind of polling questions throughout. They're just going to help us out here just a little bit, understand, first of all, who is on here today and kind of what everyone's role is. We're going to get a little bit of history from everybody to look at experience and what everybody does. And kind of use that to gauge some of the discussion today. And I just want you to know this is really friendly. I try to watch for hands going up, but I'm not the best at that. So if you need to throw elbows and just, you know, talk, please cut me off and talk. I am never offended by that. So heaven knows I do it to other people all the time, unintentionally. So you're with friends today. Feel like it's a friendly discussion. So our first question today, hopefully I covered the bases, but go ahead and fill in the blanks here for us. Let us know what your role is today. And I try to make it care coordinator heavy, but we realize people have other roles here as well. So you might come in as not just a care coordinator, you might come in as something else. And I will tell you, I was super loopy putting this together, this slide, and I probably missed something. So let's kind of see where everybody falls in and kind of what that professional experience is. We'll give you just another minute or two. And all right. I'm going to give it 5 more seconds and then it's speak now or forever hold your peace. But it looks like we have a pretty broad distribution here, that we have roughly a third of folks kind of falling into the care coordinator with other training, care coordinator with a nursing background, and then, you know, 9% of in social work. Administrative management, somewhere in there. Hopefully this adds up to around 100%. We're not going to do the math because if the total is more than 100%, we have issues. So we have a broad distribution here today, and we're going to kind of keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the slides. Okay, so next question here, or actually, let's look at this definition of a medical home. So we just want to bring this up because, you know, we're still on a federal level. I just want to let you know that the feds are still really interested in looking at medical home. And medical home is that place where you receive your usual and customary care, but it includes these points. It's accessible, it's continuous, it's comprehensive, it is family-centered. Family is the focus of the medical home. It's coordinated, and that's where all y'all come in. That's probably our operative word here. It's compassionate and it's culturally effective. And we're going to look at some more slides and gloss over them really quickly because they bust this down. The American Academy of Pediatrics breaks this down even more definitions of what a medical home is. And when you look at the complexity of it, a medical home is just this massive organization, even if it is a small group, that is really designed to give families a comprehensive experience that gets families what they need. And it's especially important if you're a family with a child with special health care needs. And it's amazing because this term has been out there for forever, but people don't always understand what a medical home is. And people are always looking at the standard that you have this certification, this credential, whatever. But I'm going to bring it to a very small level and say, I think every practice out there is in some way or another on a continuum of what a medical home is. And it could be based off, I mean, it can be for reasons of no staff, no time, no money, no ability to kind of put all of these parts and pieces together. But in all shapes and forms, most practices try to do at least some of these things to make sure their families are comfortable and receiving care in a way that provides the best service for the families that they're serving. So I'm going to ask you this question, and I don't expect a response, but what percentage of Utah families see them participating in a medical home? Every year, the National Survey of Children's Health puts out a survey to approximately 750 families around the state. And we use that information for a maternal child health block grant, and we compare that with some national standards out there. And it's a random sample. It's not a cohort. It's not the same family surveyed year after year. So it's kind of luck of the draw. It's randomized. And because we have such a small percentage of people that are surveyed, we generally look at 2 years worth of data when we evaluate some of the responses here. So we have a slightly larger pool for statistical significance. So as we look at percentage of families see themselves participating in a medical home, this next slide really kind of shows a 2-year survey response for what that looked at. And I botched my slide and I didn't put the most recent on here, but I'm just going to show you what this looks at. So the 2018-2019 combined data set showed 46.4% of respondents for children with special health care needs, which is roughly anywhere from 13 to about 17% in Utah of children are determined to have special health care needs. The national average right now is about 19%. In 2018-19, 46.4% of Utah families reported having children with special health care needs. The 2019-2020 data set was 57.2%, and it was right around 56-ish% for the 2020-2021 data set. For the non-CSHCN, or just our general pediatric population, we came in at 56.5 and 55.4% for families who responded that they saw themselves participating in a medical home. And when you're looking at those things, some of the responses that they give to determine medical home, it's a combination of multiple questions, but they look at, do you have a usual source of care? Are you able to get a referral for specialty care when you need it? Do you have the ability to receive care coordination and other services like that? So it's kind of an amalgam of multiple questions when we look at that. Now I'm going to gloss through these next slides. The font is going to be teeny. Please don't strain your eyes looking at these, but I just want you to see how complex the medical home really is when you look at it. But I think if any of you were to really parse these out, most of you are doing a lot of these things within a medical home. It's just a matter of, looping it all back and providing the full compendium of services back to your families. So the first one is accessible. AAP says there are 6 pieces there. Family-centered, we do 7 through 13. So another 6 components there. It's continuous. Comprehensive, and that's pretty comprehensive and in like a 4-point font. It's coordinated. Okay, care coordinators, we've got a lot of stuff going on there as well. It's compassionate. Okay, big font there. And maybe more easily done. It's culturally effective. So those are all the parts and pieces. I have another little poll coming up here with you. So let me ask you this piece. How much experience do you have providing care coordination? So kind of want to look at the group here and just kind of see. And while you're doing that, I want to kind of explain why we're having this topic today. As care coordinators, it's probably something we should visit on kind of a regular basis, but we did get a comment from some newer care coordinators who said, we sometimes feel like we kind of don't know where to go or what to do on care coordination because we were kind of thrust into this role. And then, on the other side of it, we have people who've been providing care coordination for a really long time. So let's take a peek there and see what we've got. We still have a couple answers trickling in. Well, we're at 100% there. Anyone else want to put a response in there? Okay, so we have a handful of folks who've done it for more than 20 years. And the majority of folks will be doing it for 1 to 5 years. Okay, along those same lines, I have another question for you. So I want everybody to kind of think about some of these answers as we move on. The next question is, how much experience do you have working with children with special health care needs? Now, this is not just care coordination. This is through your professional lifespan. This can even be in your own personal life. How much experience do you have working with kids with special health care needs? In any role, professional, your own kids, your grandkids, your nieces, nephews, that sort of thing. All right, I didn't have a crystal ball, putting these together, but I kind of thought that would be the distribution. I figured a lot of folks have a really long time working with kids with special health care needs, even though care coordination may not have been what they've been doing for the last little while, because we had a really large group of folks who've been doing care coordination for 1 to 5 years. But, look at 53% have worked with children with special health care needs or have experience with kids with special health care needs for more than 20 years. Okay, so let me ask this next question. In your agency or in your practice, so whichever one, and practice might be almost more applicable here, because if you're with an agency, you may work with all calls that come in to provide care coordination or help families with your practice or agency. This is, I can't remember if it says is a word tree or this is just whatever. This is a free response. How do you select where you are for which children you're going to provide care coordination? You can't serve everybody probably, but how do you pick in your organization? What is the way you choose families for care coordination? Is it acuity of illness? There are certain diagnoses that you follow. There are families that are super needy. What is the way you do that? Go ahead and type words in. We're going to see if we get some commonalities here. All right, let's go ahead and stop there. So feel free to raise hands. Let's stop here for just a minute. Are these coming in typically from, and feel free to chime in or type in the chat. Are typically the kids you're following coming in because a provider or someone in your practice is saying, we're concerned with this family and we want you to provide care coordination for them? Or are you getting a referral because they say this is diagnosis X and the family was just diagnosed and we want you to follow this patient because we're concerned? So for example, little Bobby was just diagnosed with autism. It's a huge major diagnosis. We're really concerned about this family. We want you to follow up with this kid. How do you guys do it? And if anyone wants to throw that in the chat, or if they want to just please unmute themselves and just let us know. I'm just really curious with that. Help me out here, guys. Throw in the
Say
chat.
that again, Eric.
Okay, so what we're looking at is, and I'm going to speak for ISP. If we get a call or we get a referral, we work with the family. We figure, the kid's been determined to have a special healthcare need, and we get a referral quite often saying, all right, will you help the Jones family because Bobby was just diagnosed with autism and we need to see if we can get him into ABA services, and we need him to have an OT coming out to the house, a couple times a month, etc. In your practice or with your provider, how do you determine what kids you're going to follow in that practice? So how do those come into you as a referral? Is it based off of just, the provider says, wow, there's diagnosis X and we're really worried about this family? Or just, this is diagnosis X and we always follow diagnosis X.
Well, I'm on the ISP team, so I don't know if it's kind of the same thing, but every referral we address, whether it's referring to somebody else or educating them about resources and what their options are. I personally, some of my families are the most underprivileged. Those are the ones that need more help. And I think that's probably the same for all of my coworkers and probably other colleagues in other fields, is depending on need of the parent. I mean, some parents, you can be like, here's the number, call ABA therapy, so-and-so. I just talked to them, they have openings. And others, we really might have to slow down, and they don't understand the reports. That's a lot of what we get is, I've got a diagnosis, here's the report. I don't even know. A lot of times our families don't even know if they got a diagnosis, even though it says it in the report, they don't understand it. So a lot of it is that education piece, and that's meeting with Natalie from our team to help explain that, and then meeting with Joel for occupational therapy, and then, referring to ABA therapy. So it just depends on the need. Some families I can give a phone number and here are your options, and they run with it. And some, we hold their hand a lot, which we love. We love our family.
Okay, I appreciate that. And thanks, Gwen. With the fact that that's kind of our bread and butter at ISP, we work with those families. But if you're in a pediatric practice or a family practice, and you've got 9 bazillion kids coming in and out of there, and lots of them have special healthcare needs. Again, our average is somewhere about 16 to 17% of all children in Utah are considered to have a special healthcare need, but that ranges from kids who have asthma all the way to children who are very complex nonverbal autism spectrum disorder diagnoses, to children who are tech dependent and all of the rest of it. You've got a pretty broad range of kids in there. And I just realized, if you're putting stuff in text, or comments, I don't think I'm seeing that. So would someone keep an eye on that for me? I'm getting a weird view of the meeting. Did anything come in on our chat at all? Any comments?
There are some comments on the chat. So it's usually says like provider will send a request from doctor, provider will request for high social or medical needs, referred by provider, all of the above.
Okay.
Referral from internal program. So a lot of provider directed as well.
Okay, and sorry guys, I had that kind of dopey look on my face, but I wasn't seeing the chats coming in. So if someone will keep an eye on that chat for me, I appreciate it. I'm just not seeing that. So they're coming in various and sundry ways, and you get these families, and it can be a lot. So keeping that in mind, and keeping in, that you have a ton of families, I'm going to ask you this next question, and then we're going to go through some additional slides. So let me ask you this one. What are your pain points? What are the areas when you're providing care coordination or working with families? What are your pain points when it comes to providing care coordination? What's the anguish? What's the tough? What's the trickiest things for you? Okay. So let those come in. Lack resources. Okay. Okay. So resources, insurance, lack of resources, insurance. We'll give it another minute here, guys. Services, okay. All right, so this I've got in a few slides, I just wanted to see if I was able to forecast what some of your pain points would be, because I kind of address some of these in just a minute here. So I wondered if I was good at coming up with some of these. So we all know finding resources for families is tough, you know, and especially if you live in an area where you don't have a lot of resources. If you're in rural Utah, I have got 4 absolutely outstanding care coordinators at our local health departments that we contract with. And in some of these small communities, there's nobody hanging a shingle to provide services for our kids with special healthcare needs. So some of these care coordinators are miracle workers, tracking stuff down and finding stuff as close to home as possible. There are language barriers, finding something that's compatible with their insurance, getting families to follow through. You know, you sometimes can't want something more than the family wants it, but these families are overwhelmed and burdened, and it's tough to be able to do that. We'll go ahead mental health stuff, you know, supports for mental health. We know there are just a dearth of providers out there. Okay, we're going to stop with this one. I've got another question for you here. So if you're only a care coordinator, I don't mean to put it that way. If care coordination is the one thing you do in your office, or if you wear 26 hats and part of it, your job is care coordination, how much of your work week are you allowed to spend on providing care coordination for the patients in your office? All right, so far pretty good. Does anybody find that they wear multiple hats and care coordination is just a sideline and you're asked to care coordinate, but you know, you only get to do it as a work in between weighing babies, giving shots, making referrals, getting, you know, coordinating insurance, all of the rest of that? Or do a lot of you have time to make this work? Because if this is really the distribution, this is better than I thought. I thought a lot of folks were going to fall into that really low category there. Okay, that's not too bad. Let me ask you this other one here. And then this next one is, if your office had unlimited resources, time, money, staff, what strategy, policy, or practice would you implement to make care coordination more effective? And this is just the wish list thing. And we're going to keep this really fast because we're gonna just go through the rest of these slides probably in the next 12, 13 minutes to have just a little bit of discussion there. So if your office had unlimited resources, I like that. And these are comments, not word tree, because those word trees are starting to bust up some of your phrases in there. So we'll do it this way next time. Okay, a social worker on staff. What else would you guys do? Okay, an office help for application. So kind of like a navigator. I was listening on NPR this morning talking about the people who are falling off of Medicaid post-COVID. And they're talking Florida and the sheer number of people who fell off of Medicaid, even with letters and texts and things, you know, going out to families and just people falling off of Medicaid. So, you know, having folks to help with that. Okay, statewide advertising of care coordination services, grants for families to help with food security. Okay. Resource curator, I like that term. Okay. All right, so a lot of different things. Someone who knows what's going on, can keep track of the resources, pots of money to help folks out. And I just did what I always do, and I screwed up my my slides. There we go. We're back where we should be. Okay, so here are some of those big response grants for families for needs. Okay, in-office help for applications, social worker on staff. All right, so based off of some of these needs, I was second guessing to see what we would be looking at. As far as some of the helps that we might And I did it again as I tried to scroll on the document. Sorry, guys. You know, men of a certain age, what can I say? All right, we're going to go to this slide. So as we look at resources, the ability to refer out, it is tough to keep track of what's out there. I can't tell you how many times I myself or my staff has gone to make a referral to someone we have used for years or an organization we've used for a long time, only to find out, one, they no longer take the insurance, or two, they're no longer where they used to be with phone number or address, or three, they just don't exist anymore. Funding went away, resources, their funding source is gone. So we always use the internet to verify that addresses and phone numbers are correct, organizations still exist. But again, a shameless plug for Medical Home Portal. It is such an amazing resource to look up those types of services that may be available to your family. And if you have not taken the opportunity to look at the brand new look and feel of the portal, it is beautiful, it is user-friendly. There are still a few bugs in there, and I know that Athena and Mindy and Michelle are saying, if you find something, send it in, because they want to get it working. But it is just beautiful to look at, and it navigates so nicely, and there's so many helpful, wonderful resources on there. Please look up your Medical Home Portal. The other piece, 211 is a great way. Now 211 feeds into Medical Home Portal, but 211 through United Way is also a great way to help find resources. And quite often those lists on 211 are very current and updated with the most recent information. Another list I forgot to put on here, Colin Kingsbury, who is our Autism Systems Development Coordinator and Manager here at Utah Department of Health and Human Services, keeps a list of ABA providers and service providers who can diagnose autism spectrum disorder. So he has a couple of lists on that website as well. The other thing is too, you can always use the listserv through the Utah Children's Care Coordination Network and reach out when you have a question or are looking for a resource in your area or something that is statewide or national. So we want to throw that out always as an option that you can rely on. How about tracking an organization? What do you do with your kids once they need care coordination? How do you follow up? How do you track them? How do you make sure they're getting the services that they need, that they made it to that office visit, to that social service organization, to that that entity that the provider or someone in the office felt like would be useful for that family, or that the family came to you with a need and said, we're struggling with X, how can we get that service? I threw this big old gnarly book up there from HRSA that's called Registries for Evaluating Patient Outcomes. I could be 6,000 pages for all I know. I was just looking for a graphic, but a lot of office will use a registry, which can be as simple as an Excel spreadsheet just to track the patients that you're following on your for acuity or for need. Just make sure that you're checking back, touching bases with those families to make sure that when you sent them to provider X, that it wasn't just a phone number and a website, but that families really were able to get into the service and that you help them decrease barriers or help the family get into that type of a service. I know that in our electronic health record, as deficient as it is here at Department of Health and Human Services, and I'm sure my staff is all rolling their eyes at that one, but we have the ability to set alerts and tracking to say, on this date, we want to follow up with the Jones family and make sure that they did get that application completed for Medicaid, or that they did make it to that, that they got assessed for early intervention services or whatever the service may be. So that ability to set a tickler, follow up with the families, make sure that they got the services they needed. And that's one of our quality assurance measures within our program, is to make absolutely positive that every family gets that feedback, and a follow-up within a certain amount of time. So if you're not tracking your families, make sure you get some sort of a tracking mechanism built into either your EHR, EMR, or even a separate, spreadsheet that you can track them in. What about those complex patients, or even more so, complex parents? Our parents are going to bat for our kids every single day. But, sometimes we have some that are very demanding, and we have sometimes parents that aren't as demanding as maybe they should be. So are you able to assess their needs? Do you have the time and the ability to help follow up with those patients? And are you able to assess everything the family might need? A provider might make a referral and say, this family, this kid really needs ABA services after an autism diagnosis. And that might be what you work on. But if you were to do an intake with that family on a little bit more of almost a social work / medical side of things, you might realize that that family is also facing food insecurity because dad just lost his job. They're facing eviction, and they're going to be losing their health insurance. So at Integrated Services, we try to do an intake template. We use an intake template that we ask a whole bunch of medical and social type questions. This is not quite a social driver of health type of a questionnaire. We're looking at hopefully putting something like that into place in the next several months, but really taking a look at what's going on and a deep dive into the family's needs. So if you are able to do that, and you have the time and ability to jump in and assess some of those needs, this can be really helpful. It can be a little bit smug sometimes to really push the ticket on getting a child into occupational therapy, and that's your push and focus when family is struggling with just some of the temporal needs. Food, housing, paying the light bill, paying the electricity, things like that. Quite often we can get those things resolved first, then it's easier to work on what the referral issue was. So, being able to have that intake form is really helpful for us. The other thing is helping families stay organized. And one way to do that is a care notebook. And you will see on there just the front page. I took this right out of our very own beloved medical home portal, but there's a whole section in there on creating a care notebook and helping families create a care notebook so they have all their kids' information available and shareable as they move from provider to provider or from support to support, including social services type areas. So helping families stay organized can ultimately help you provide the best service for the family when they can have everything there at a glance. And I've not been paying attention. Do we have any comments or questions there in the chat? Okay, thank you I saw Michelle shake her head. So Michelle, you're keeping me honest here. All right.
Sorry, Eric, one question from Evelyn. Do you have a copy of that template in the medical home portal? The standardized intake template. I don't know.
That is an ISP template. And I was jokingly going to say, Evelyn, for $20, I'll send it to you, but no. And I take Venmo. No, we would gladly share that with you. This is just something that our team has put together. And this is kind of a fillable, I don't know what you call it in Word, like a PDF-able. Oh, that almost sounded crude. Sorry. You can PDF this document and fill some stuff in. What we like about this is we have templates built into our EHR, but they look very medical when you print them out. This is like a Word document, and because it's got colored sections and things like that, families can print this off and take it with them. But Evelyn, if you'll give us your information, we gladly send you a copy of this, and you can take it and edit it and whatever you would like. This isn't sacrosanct, so it's very adaptable to whatever you would like. So we gladly share that with you.
If you want to share it with me, Eric, I can actually turn it into a fillable PDF for everyone too. So.
Well, Michelle has the skills, and we'll let you do it, Michelle. So thank you very much. That's why we love having Michelle as part of our team. So thank you, Michelle. All right. Staffing issues. I saw that come up as one of the big, bold things. No office has infinite staff. And we know sometimes families hit you with just a litany of things that you may not be able to address. I just want to reiterate that you do have some reinforcements out there. And it does not mean that you have to relinquish all of your care coordination efforts on a family if you don't have 100% of the time to dedicate to that family. Let's say there are certain things you can take care of in the office, but you just flat out know you don't have time to help that family who's really struggling, or maybe parents have some intellectual disability themselves. You just don't have the ability to help them complete a Medicaid application, or kind of help them stay organized on that SSI piece or something like that. Call in the reinforcements. My team at ISP, with our 4 local health departments and our internal staff, are more than willing to help partner with you to kind of tighten up that care coordination piece and help with certain parts and pieces that you need help with. That can be as simple as just consulting and saying, hey, I'm not sure how to help this family. Do you have tips, tricks, anything to help? Even to saying, this family really needs some help filling out some forms or some help with something. And we are really glad to help out and do that. And I know Utah Family Voices, Utah Parent Center is willing to kind of do that as well. So feel like you can call in the reinforcements. You don't have to be an expert on everything. And there are people out there who can help. So feel like you can do that if you have a family you're really concerned about. We're glad to help where we can. How about people who are new to this? You are inexperienced, or you are new experience. Free cheap training. And cheap not as in quality, but free as in it doesn't cost you a lot more than your time. This is an excellent forum every single month with really good dialogue, and we learn from each other, and excellent topics. Mindy and her staff just put together outstanding programs. So please take advantage of that. Department of Health and Human Services, quite often there are free trainings out there, particularly in the mental health arena, ways to, help and beef up, just your ability to refer families. So if you're not on any of the listservs or notifications for that, figure out how you can be informed from the kind of the mental health side of Department of Health and Human Services. Utah State Board of Education as well offers trainings and symposia that you can attend. Through your licensure or credentialing, if it's required of your job, look for things and stay caught up on that. There is peer support. So it goes back to that last slide. If you need help, reach out to us at ISP, reach out to Utah Parent Center. And through the listserv here, we have done some amazing things by reaching out and sharing resources across this broad network of folks who do care coordination every single day. I guess the piece is you're not alone. Lots of folks out there who are willing to help. And I'm always dumbfounded when, like, Michelle will send out to the listserv, hey, we're looking for service X or medication X or whatever. And all of a sudden we have it resolved really quickly. This next one here, what was your previous work prior to taking on care coordination? I know a lot of folks are just thrust right into this care coordination realm, but people had more than 20 years experience working with children with special health care needs. Rely on your previous experience, rely on that help you have with, or that experience you have working with family members or other work that you've done in other areas. It is amazing how things you've done in your past life circle back around to this arena. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there, and I have left zero time for questions. That was not my intent, but I am always happy to take questions after the fact, and I'm going to just leave this here. You are welcome to reach out to us. That is our group email there, but you can reach out to me at Christensen. And if I actually had the ability to get into the chat, I put it there, but it's Christensen, Christensen at utah.gov. I would be happy to take any questions or, help you in any way that I can as well. With that, we are at the top of the hour, 10 o'clock. I get to bid you all fond adieu and thank you for coming today. I appreciate your responses in, sending the polls out today and all of the rest of it. I just want to let you know that it is a huge pleasure for me and for our team to work with all of you as our colleagues. We're all in this together. And if we can help a patient that isn't in our practice or agency, that still is a huge win for that family and for all of us. So please feel like you can reach out and we can all support each other. Happy hump day, happy Wednesday. We'll wish you all a terrific week, and we will look forward to seeing you next month. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. We'll see you July 19th. That's our next meeting.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. This was great topics today.